If you ever looked up lists or videos about the most disturbing movies of all time, there's almost an absolute chance that one, if not more, of the films in the Japanese Guinea Pig series are included. The straight-to-video series initially began as pseudo-snuff, but eventually evolved into more comedic entries. However, all 6 entries share the same theme of having extreme amounts of blood and gore. One or more of these films have apparently influenced a serial killer and apparently even convinced Charlie Sheen that he actually watched a snuff film, causing him to report it to the FBI. Now I say apparently because there seems to be a lot of misinformation on these films, so I went on a deep dive to find out what information on these films is true and what is misinformation and what is an urban legend. All of these films are easily watchable online, even uploaded on YouTube uncut. However, for my search for information, I purchased a DVD box set that was released by Unearthed Films in the 2000s. It is worth noting that this box set is long out of print and goes for hundreds of dollars online, so I wouldn't really recommend paying that much to watch these films. It's not worth it when they're easily available online. But anyways, the reason I paid that much for this box set was because it contains information on the history of these films and interviews with the director of 2 of the films. In addition, I wanted to get the closest experience to watching these films as to when they were initially released on VHS. I want to do this as it relates to the Charlie Sheen urban legend. The VHS of these films are even harder to find and are also pricey, so the DVDs are just fine in my opinion. To get the full low quality, I put these DVDs in my PS2 that is connected to my CR TV. With all this, let's first explore the plot of each film. Guinea Pig, The Devil's Experiment was filmed in 1985 and was directed and written by Satoru Goura. According to the DVD, the film was released in 1986, however online sources say that the film was released in 1985. I mention this as there is a lot of conflicting information on the release of these films, which I will touch upon when I talk about the controversies surrounding these films. For consistency, I'm covering the plots of these films according to the year of release defined by the DVD. The series name comes from this film as explained in the intro, as Guinea Pig refers to experimental material. As mentioned, this film is supposed to replicate a snuff film, therefore is filmed with a found footage style. The film opens explaining that Ogura was sent this tape and that it takes place in the summer. The film follows 3 men torturing a woman in a variety of ways, as the video is divided into 10 chapters entitled Hit, Kick, Claw, Spin, Sound, Skin, Burn, Worm, Guts, and Needle. There's really not much to it besides that, as in the end the woman is shown hanging outdoors. In terms of realism, this movie looks extremely fake. There are times where we see the POV of the woman getting tortured along with other shots that would be super unrealistic to be in an actual snuff film, such as seeing a camera shot of the pulling of a nail, then the reaction shot of the woman. The kicking and hitting all look fake, and the spitting torture was unintentionally hilarious at the very least to me. Although I give the actress mad props for filming these scenes, as having maggots on your face sounds terrifying. The needle to the eye is the scene that everyone remembers and is even used as the cover of the VHS. Though the version on the VHS is a drawing and not from the actual film, I do consider the cover to be iconic when considering horror cinema. Next, we have the most infamous of the series, Flower of Flesh and Blood. Originally, Ogura sent the script for The Devil's Experiment to Hideshi Hino, a horror manga artist. He liked the idea so much that he was allowed to create his own entry in the series. During filming of The Devil's Experiment, Hino wrote the script for the second entry, Flower of Flesh and Blood. Filming began right after the completion of The Devil's Experiment and was released only a couple months after the release of The Devil's Experiment. The film is based on Hino's manga titled Akai Hana. The manga is about a creepy man who kills a woman and uses her dismembered corpse to grow his special plant. The manga is not really good if you ask me, although it was hard to find but was available on the DVD. Really not relevant to the film, but I think it's worth mentioning. The film is a recreation of an 8mm film that was in a package that Hino mysteriously got. The film follows as a middle-aged man kidnaps a woman, drugs her, and then proceeds to dismember her, all the while dressed as a samurai. In the end, he chops the woman's head off with his sword and adds parts of her body to his garden, which is just a collection of other body parts. We see another camera POV following another girl, implying that he's doing it again. It ends with the words that says that Hino gave the contents of the package to the police. And that's really it. Hino said that the reason he shot this film with a minimal story was due to the limited budget and shooting schedule. He tried to create a story of the film, but he found that filming it would be too expensive, so he rewrote everything according to the budget. In terms of how authentic the film is, first from the get-go, the film labels itself as a recreation of the 8mm film. Second, during the kidnapping scene, the camera is filming as if the guy kidnapping is holding it, but it then cuts to a wide angle of the kidnapping, so it already looks fake. The gore effects are not believable, as you would think cutting the arm off a human would be more difficult, and the fact that there are these weird sound effects used when he's cutting off the arms of the lady. In addition, there's some deliberate camera shots and placement that I find hard to believe anyone could think that this film is real. Moving forward, the third film in the series is titled He Never Dies and was directed by Masayuki Hisazumi. This is when the series changed to be more plot-driven and comedic. The film opens up with an American doctor talking about strange cases. The film then goes to a salaryman named Hideshi who tries to kill himself by slitting his wrists, but he realizes that he feels no pain and that he cannot die. Hence the title. He invites his coworker over, and with the tools the coworker brings, he mutilates himself in order to prank his coworker, who faints at the sight of decapitation. The coworker's wife enters the apartment and notices Hideshi's head is still alive. She wakes her husband, and the two clean the apartment. The salaryman's head then says that he is ready to go to work the next day, and that's really it. Pretty different from the previous. After the release of this film, the documentary The Making of Guinea Pig was released, which shows the behind the scenes of these three films. However, most of the film is about He Never Dies, so that's really disappointing because I really wanted to learn more about the first two films. So again, there's conflicting reports of which film was the fourth entry and when the next three films were released. Again, I'm gonna go off what the DVD says because it's confusing. I'm gonna talk about this later when I talk about the controversy behind the series. So apparently in 1988, Mermaid in a Manhole was released and was directed by Flowers of Flesh and Blood director Hideshi Hino. The film loses the comedy of the previous entry and instead deals with body horror and is often considered the best in the series. Plot follows a painter who finds a dead baby in a sewer who he paints. We later find out that his wife had died of cancer. On another trip to the sewer, he encounters a mermaid that he had encountered when he was a boy. He notices the mermaid is sick and covered in boils, so he decides to take her to his home and try to help her, all the while painting her. The mermaid gets more sick and infested with boils and worms. The artist tries to help her, but the mermaid wants him to finish his painting. He eventually uses the pus and blood coming from the mermaid to finish his painting. The mermaid then, near death, asks the painter to kill her, in which he does. Then he dismembers her, and it is revealed that she was pregnant. The man is then found by the police. However, the mermaid parts are nowhere to be found, and it turns out that he murdered his wife, who had the stomach cancer and was pregnant. The man still believes he murdered the mermaid, and as the film ends, an unknown fish scale from an unknown species is found in the bathtub, which makes the viewer question what actually transpired. At the end of the credits, there is a small scene in the sewer where we hear something move in the water, further confusing the audience. The next film is The Android of Notre Dame that was released in 1988. The film is directed by Kusuhito Kuromoto, and it follows a dwarf scientist trying to find the cure for his sister's illness. A stranger offers the scientist bodies to experiment, but he fails to do anything substantial. Eventually he experiments on the man who gave him the bodies, and the film really just ends. Like, he resurrects his sister who asks why he brought her back when she was in peace, and then it cuts to the dwarf being an old android thing. I don't really know about this one. The plot of this film is really incomprehensible and not really worth watching, so sorry if this synopsis is bare bones, I'd say. The final film is Devil Woman Doctor, which was apparently released in 1990 and was directed by Hajime Tabe. This takes the series back to a black comedy approach. The film follows a drag female doctor as she encounters different patients with different and strange conditions, such as a family with exploding heads when they get upset, and a man with an elastic wiener. I'm obviously not joking about that, it's actually in the movie. And that's pretty much it. You follow along as you explore these strange and sometimes disturbing conditions. The film ends with the cast getting hit with pies that have spikes in them, so that's kind of funny. It is quite funny and somewhat entertaining, honestly, although the dinner scene where all the body parts are on the table was pretty disgusting to me, at least. The film was also followed by a making of Devil Woman Doctor, where you get to see how the film was made, and there are some funny moments in the doc, and even an instance where the DVD translator cannot figure out why the four men are showing their behinds to the camera. A best of guinea pig special called Slaughter Special was released in 1991, where gore highlights of all 6 films are shown. And that's it for the plot. Now let's look at the controversy. The majority of the controversy surrounding these films revolves around the second film in the series, Flower of Flesh and Blood. The most significant controversy revolves around Japanese serial killer Tsutomu Miyazaki, also known as the Otaku Killer. He murdered 4 young girls aged 4 to 7 between August 1988 to June 1989. He would murder these girls in his car, dismember them, molest their corpses, cannibalize the corpses, keep body parts as trophies, and would send photos, ashes, teeth, and letters to the victim's family. He was eventually caught in July 1989 after being confronted taking nude photographs of a young girl. He was eventually put to death by hanging in 2008, so, rest in piss. I'm not going to go into further detail of his crimes or life, but when he was caught, they searched his apartment for evidence, which they did find many videos and photographs of his victims, but they also found his very large videotape collection, around 5,599 tapes that either contain anime, adult films, hentai, or horror films. Apparently, Miyazaki had one movie from the Guinea Pig series in his possession, but it is very unclear which of the films he had, as there is a lot of conflicting information, and this relates to the conflicting information on the releases of the last 3 films of the series. So do your best to try to follow along with this. According to director Hino, before Miyazaki was captured, some people watched Flowers of Flesh and Blood and reported to the police that the murders were similar to the film, which they are not, honestly, and the police watched the film and it had the cast, but not Hino yet, questioned, as they believed someone in the production could have been replicating the murders. When Miyazaki was arrested, it was falsely reported by the media that the film Miyazaki had was Flowers of Flesh and Blood, and that he had recreated scenes from the movie. Director Hino was then questioned about the film by the police, as they didn't know that Guinea Pig series was a series and not just a single film. But it was discovered that the film found at Miyazaki's house wasn't Flowers of Flesh and Blood. Now, which film Miyazaki owned in the series is up for debate, as I cannot figure out what it is. In one of the interviews Hino gave in the DVD, he states that it was the Devil's Experiment that was found in the apartment. However, in another interview on the DVD, he states that it was Devil Woman Doctor and the making of Devil Woman Doctor that was found in the apartment. To further convolute things, Hino gave another interview in 2009 with Vice and stated that the film found at the apartment was Guinea Pig 4, which he said he had nothing to do with. But according to the DVD and Wikipedia, the 4th film was Mermaid in a Manhole, which, if you can remember, was directed by Hino himself. Then we go to Devil Woman Doctor, which according to Wikipedia and the DVD was released in 1990. However, other online sources say the film was released in 1986 and is the 4th entry in the series. If the film was released in 1990, then it couldn't be Devil Woman Doctor. But again, the film could have been released in 1986. Even the VHS release claims Devil Woman Doctor is the 4th entry in the series, so I really don't know what Guinea Pig film was found in the apartment, but it is clear that it wasn't Flowers of Flesh and Blood. But it seems that Hino himself doesn't know either, but it is also important to know that things could have been lost in translation from these interviews, so I really don't know. If you do know, please feel free to write in the comments and show your source, because I cannot figure it out. So yeah, there's that. Okay guys, a bit of an editor's note. While I was looking for footage to show for the Miyazaki part of this video, I did find this news report from Japan from the early 90s to late 80s. I'm not entirely sure what they're saying, obviously, so if you could please someone could please translate this, that'd be great. I'll leave a link in the description. Around the 16-minute mark, where they showed the, I guess, Devil Woman Doctor and the making of Guinea Pig cassettes, or VHSs, my bad. And this is interesting because they're not reporting that it was Flowers of Flesh and Blood. I'm not entirely sure if this proves that it was those two that Miyazaki had, and the media is just saying that this is what they believe was there. And I'm not entirely sure what they're saying about these two specific releases, because if they're showing it off, that means I'm pretty sure they're just saying that Miyazaki mimicked this or something, or was influenced by this. So, you know, this might just all be nonsense. But anyways, I thought it would be interesting to add this to the video. So, yeah. Anyways, as a result of all this, the Tokyo metropolitan government attempted to use the Guinea Pig series as an example to enforce restraints in regards to violence in Japanese entertainment. However, much of the blame behind the incident was instead put on Japanese culture as a whole at the time for creating a society that bred such a mentality. Apparently, a number of boards of education at the time in Japan attempted to ban Flowers of Flesh and Blood, but were not successful as many stores still sold the VHS. Funny enough, in the Vice interview, director Hino stated jokingly that the withdrawal of the film was, quote, a great success, unquote. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's talk about the Charlie Sheen incident. So this has sort of become an urban legend, and I sort of dig deeper to the truth, and by that I mean the DVD provided a pretty good idea of what actually occurred. So like I mentioned, I watch all these films on DVD on a CRT TV in order to get the somewhat low quality experience of watching these films to simulate what it would look like in the 80s and 90s, but still it all looked fake to me. But apparently not to Charlie Sheen. Maybe it was the drugs he could have been on while watching, I don't know. So the legend usually goes that somehow Charlie Sheen watched a copy of Flower of Flesh and Blood. I've heard stories where he watched it at a party and stories where he watched it with a friend, but the legend goes that he legitimately thought the film was real snuff and reported it to the authorities, who told Sheen that the film was already being investigated by the FBI and the Japanese police. In the 90s, the Guinea Pig films hadn't been officially released in the USA, and apparently the unofficial distributor of the Guinea Pig films in the United States at the time was Chaz Balloon, who was a writer for Fangoria magazine. As the legend goes, he was contacted by the FBI, and so was director Hino, with Charlie Sheen's copy of the film reportedly being confiscated. So for the DVD, Chaz Balloon gives his account of his perspective on the matter. So Chaz was asked to create the most disgusting video he could assemble for a Deep Red staffer, Deep Red being a horror magazine created by Chaz, to be shown at his weekend birthday party. So he put together a montage of gore scenes from multiple films, and the first segment was Flowers of Flesh and Blood. Important to note that he did not put any real-life atrocities in the tape, so it eliminates the possibility of there being any actual real death on the tape. The staffer reported back to Chaz saying that it was a success. Apparently the tape then made rounds across the East Coast afterwards, and eventually he heard that people considered the film to be authentic. Chaz then said that he never actually got a call or any contact from any authorities about Flowers of Flesh and Blood or the tape, and only received a call from the same Deep Red staffer who he initially created the gore mixtape, that he would eventually be contacted for questioning by the authorities. News outlets did report that the film was actual snuff, so that did not help. But that's all that Chaz claimed happened. I tried finding any original source to where this story emerged, but I could not find anything substantial. There isn't even an interview where Sheen mentions the movie at all. So I believe that this is an actual urban legend. I believe that the gore mixtape created by Chaz was seen and reported by random people and was investigated and determined to be fake rather quickly. Apparently there's rumors that Sheen got the film from film critic Chris Gore, but I haven't found anything that really would prove this. I think this legend was spread from person to person and soon became somewhat of a truth, even though there is no information on Sheen ever watching this movie, even knowing its existence. I don't know, maybe Sheen watched it while high on cocaine or something, because I'm trying to figure out how anyone could think Flowers of Flesh and Blood is real. In the Vice interview, Hino commented that when the US version of Flowers of Flesh and Blood came out, the first thing interviews asked was about any information about the Charlie Sheen incident, in which he replied that he didn't really know anything about the incident, nor Charlie Sheen. So even he thinks it's just a rumor, as he never was questioned by the FBI about the film. Continuing with more incidents, in 1992 in Sweden, a lawyer saw and reported the film to the authorities, who had a hard time figuring out if Flowers of Flesh and Blood was an actual snuff film. They soon found out it was fake and dropped the investigation. In the same year in Britain, 26-year-old Christopher Berthoud attempted to import Flowers of Flesh and Blood from the Blackest Heart Media. Customs seized the tape in a random search, and Christopher was put on trial for importing snuff into Great Britain. When they searched his home, they found video documentaries about serial killers as well as horror films. Christopher accepted any punishment, as he didn't want the jury to be traumatized from watching the Flowers of Flesh and Blood. In the end, experts watched the film and determined that it was fake. Christopher was fined £600 for the incident, as the court believed that even though it wasn't snuff, quote, it is so well simulated that is the impression it creates. Last is a rumor I want to talk about that there is far less info about. This is in regard to the actress that played the mermaid in Mermaid in a Manhole. I saw this trivia fact in the IMDb page for the film, which states that this is the last film in which Mari Somi starred in. She mysteriously disappeared in 1988. I do not know where this fact came from, but I checked other sites about this, and it seems to be the case that she disappeared as her whereabouts are currently unknown. I do not really believe this, and not sure why this is the consensus. I don't think she actually went missing. There was a singer named Takako Mamiya who created one album called Love Trip. It's very good, check it out. After the album flopped, her whereabouts are still unknown as the album has grown in popularity with the city pop genre. I don't think the singer died or anything. I believe she just moved on with her life. I just think that Mari also gave up on her career and decided to do something else with her life. It seems like Japanese people at the time could do so if they were somewhat famous, since there aren't as many cameras and media as there are today. I just think someone started the rumor because that was her last film and adds to the infamy of the Guinea Pig series. If anyone knows anything about her whereabouts, maybe let me know. I don't know, it's hard to find information on stuff from Japan before the 2000s, honestly, as I don't speak Japanese. Hundreds of girls auditioned to be in Flowers of Flesh and Blood and The Devil's Experiment, according to the DVD. The Devil's Experiment was a huge seller in Japan. Flowers of Flesh and Blood sold so well that it was on the list of top 10 video releases in Japan for the first 2 months that it was released. Video stores did not like carrying Flowers of Flesh and Blood, but due to its popularity, they continued to sell it. Similarly, Mermaid and Android also reached the top 10 video releases in Japan. The distributor of the first 2 films, Orange Video House, was an adult film distributor. Android of Notre Dame stars actor Tomoro Taguchi, who also acted in the main role from Tetsuo the Iron Man, which came out the same year. Great film. Director Hino stated that the man and woman in Flowers of Flesh and Blood were his friends and that they hated making the film and complained a lot. He also stated that during filming, the set furniture had been splattered with fake blood, so he and the crew decided to dispose of it by throwing it in the river, as it was too expensive to dispose of them legally. Since they feared people would call the police seeing the river covered in blood, they left a note saying, "Don't worry, this blood is fake." But the locals still called the police. Hino was questioned by the police, and the producer of the film was fined. Director Hino never received hate mail, but received letters of support during the Miyazaki murder outrage. If given the opportunity, Hino would direct another entry in the series, so he's not ashamed or regretful about his contributions to the series. Unfortunately, because of the Miyazaki case, 3 or 4 compilations of his manga work were planned to be published, but they were prohibited to be published. In addition, there were plans for Mermaid in a Manhole to become a theatrical release, but because of the Miyazaki incident, the movie never came to be because of the media backlash the series got. Also, I want to point out that DVD menus for Flowers of Flesh and Blood and Devil Woman Doctor are very cool. I wish current Blu-ray releases still put effort into their menus, but then again, the menus are slow, so I don't know if it's like efficient or not. No, these aren't good films. Funny enough, the creators and producers of these films consider them to be videos, not films. Most of the entries in the series are only about 40 to 50 minutes regardless. I think Mermaid in a Manhole is probably the best out of the 6, but even so, I wouldn't really want to watch it again, not because it's disgusting, but there's just not a lot of plot or cinematography to get me engaged into watching it again. In terms of how I'd rank the series, I'd give the number 1 spot to Mermaid in a Manhole, number 2 being Devil Woman Doctor because of how campy and stupid it is, number 3 being Flower of Flesh and Blood because of the controversy behind it, number 4 being Devil's Experiment, number 5 being He Never Dies, it's really bad and not even funny, and the last being Android of Notre Dame because of how dumb it is and the gore effects are not even entertaining. In terms of the first 2 films being pseudo snuff, I think it succeeds in that aspect in terms of atmosphere. Like the music and the overall vibe you get from watching these films at night really makes you feel like you're watching something you shouldn't be in the first place. Although with repeated viewing, you sort of lose that. Overall, this is a series that the controversy and overall rumors about it sort of become what people talk about more than the actual videos themselves. I don't really think they are that disturbing, but it's still interesting that these films were made and watched back then especially. So yeah, I hope that cleared things up regarding the history behind the series. So thank you for watching, like and subscribe. I love you.